The scar on my abdomen always feels more prominent when I'm scrubbing in for surgery. Today, as I methodically cleaned my hands and forearms, I could practically feel it burning through my scrubs, a constant reminder of why I became a surgeon in the first place. My name is Charlotte, and I've spent the last 15 years trying to become everything my mother isn't. The irony that we're both surgeons isn't lost on me. Dr. Peters? Cadence, my favorite OR nurse, poked her head through the door. "There's an urgent call for you at the nurse's station." I frowned, drying my hands. "I'm about to start Mr. Rodriguez's procedure." "It's about an emergency admission. They said it's important." At the nurse's station, I picked up the phone, expecting the usual consult request. Instead, the voice on the other end made my blood run cold. "Charlotte, your mother's been admitted. She's asking for you specifically." The fluorescent light suddenly seemed too bright. "I haven't spoken to her in 12 years, I managed to say. "She's in pretty bad shape. Suspected abdominal aortic aneurysm, given her history as a surgeon here." I cut him off. "I'll be right there." Marcus caught up with me in the hallway, his tall frame easily matching my hurried pace. "Charlotte, wait up. I heard about Violet." "Then you know I can't treat her," I said, pushing through the double doors. "It's a conflict of interest." "Is it because she's your mother, or because of what she did to you?" I stopped abruptly, turning to face him. "Both. Neither. I don't know." My hand instinctively went to my abdomen, where the jagged scar tissue told its own story. "She used expired sutures on her own daughter to save money, Marcus." "Who does that?" "The same woman who's now lying in bed 3, looking like death warmed over," he said gently. I reached the room and froze in the doorway. The woman in the bed barely resembled the towering figure from my memories. Violet's once perfect hair was streaked with gray, her face lined with pain. Her eyes flickered open. "Charlotte." "Mother." The word felt foreign on my tongue. "Still so formal," she whispered, attempting a smile that looked more like a grimace. "I suppose I deserve that." Before I could respond, the monitors started beeping. Her blood pressure was dropping. "Get me a portable ultrasound." I barked at the nearest nurse, my training kicking in despite everything. As I pressed the probe to her abdomen, the image confirmed my fears. The aneurysm was massive. "How bad?" Violet asked, her surgeon's instincts still sharp. "Bad enough that we don't have time for another surgeon to take over," I replied, already reaching for my phone to call the OR. "Then it has to be you," she said, grabbing my wrist with surprising strength. "Karma's quite the comedian, isn't it?" I pulled away, stepping back. "This isn't about karma, this is about medicine." "Charlotte," Marcus called from the doorway. "OR 2 is ready." As the team rushed to prep her for surgery, I stood there, frozen in place. The last time I'd been in an operating room with my mother, I was 12 years old and terrified. Now I would be the one holding the scalpel. "Dr. Peters?" Cadence appeared at my elbow. "What should I tell Mr. Rodriguez's team?" The question snapped me back to reality. "Get Dr. Williams to take over his case. And Cadence?" I added as she turned to leave. "I need you in OR 2 with me." She nodded, understanding in her eyes. "I've got your back." I walked to the sink to scrub in again, my movements mechanical. The scar tingled, as if recognizing the proximity of its creator. Through the window, I could see them positioning my mother on the operating table, the same table where she'd performed countless surgeries, including mine. Marcus appeared beside me, already scrubbed. "I can assist if you want." "I need you to," I admitted, staring at my hands under the running water. "Because right now, I'm not sure if I want to save her or—" "That's exactly why I'm here," he interrupted. "To make sure you do the right thing." "The right thing," I echoed. "I've spent my whole career doing the right thing, being better than her. And now you'll do it again," he said firmly. "Because that's who you are." The scrub nurse helped me into my gown and gloves. As I approached the operating table, my mother's eyes found mine before the anesthesia took hold. "Don't do what I would do," she murmured, then drifted into unconsciousness. I picked up the scalpel, its weight familiar yet somehow different. "Scalpel to skin," I announced, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. Time to find out what kind of surgeon, what kind of person I really am. The operating room felt different with my mother on the table. Every instrument I touched seemed to carry the weight of our shared history, every monitor beep echoing with memories I'd rather forget. "BP's dropping," Cadence announced, her eyes fixed on the monitors. "More volume," I ordered, my hands steady as I made the initial incision. "Marcus, what do you see?" He leaned in closer, his mask crinkling with concentration. The imaging wasn't lying. This aneurysm is massive. As we worked, the familiar dance of surgery took over. My hands moved with practiced precision, but each time I glanced at my mother's face, partially hidden behind the surgical draping, I saw flashes of that day 24 years ago. "Remember when you used to watch me operate?" My mother's voice echoed from the past. "Today you'll learn an important lesson about being practical in medicine." The memory made my hand twitch slightly. "You okay?" Marcus asked quietly. "Fine," I replied, refocusing on the task at hand. "Let's get proximal control." Just then, the monitors screamed in protest. "Pressure's crashing," Cadence called out. "She's bleeding out." "Clamp, now," I demanded, my voice sharp with urgency. Blood was pooling faster than we could suction it away. "More suction. I need to see what I'm doing." "Charlotte," Marcus warned. "We're losing her." "Not on my table," I growled, my fingers moving with desperate precision. "Not like this." The next few minutes were a blur of calculated movements and rapid decisions. Every skill I'd learned, every technique I'd mastered, it all came down to this moment. My mother's life literally in my hands. "BP stabilizing," Cadence finally announced, relief evident in her voice. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "Okay, let's close her up. And I want hourly checks in recovery." After surgery, I stood at the scrub sink, mechanically washing my hands. Marcus appeared beside me. "That was impressive work in there," he said, studying my face. "You okay?" "I just saved the life of someone who nearly ruined mine," I replied, turning off the water with more force than necessary. "I don't know what I am." "You're a doctor who just did her job exceptionally well," he countered. "Everything else is just complicated?" I finished for him, drying my hands. "You weren't there, Marcus. You didn't feel the cheap sutures she used, didn't live with the infection that followed." "Dr. Peters?" A young resident interrupted us, looking nervous. "Your mother's awake. She's asking for you." I found her in recovery, looking small against the white hospital sheets. Her eyes were clearer now, focused intently on me as I approached. "You've gotten better at your sutures," she said, her voice hoarse. "I had to." The words came out sharper than intended. She winced, though whether from physical or emotional pain I couldn't tell. "I suppose I deserved that." "You deserve a lot of things," I said, checking her vitals. "But right now, you need to rest." "Wait." She caught my hand, her grip weak but insistent. "There's something you need to know about that day." Before she could continue, the monitors started beeping erratically again. Her face contorted in pain. "What's happening?" she gasped. I quickly examined her abdomen. It was rigid, distended. "Get me an ultrasound stat." I called to the nearest nurse. The image confirmed my fears. Internal bleeding. We'd missed something. "You're bleeding internally," I explained, already moving to call the OR. "We need to go back in." "No." She grabbed my arm. "Not you. Get someone else." "There's no time," I snapped. "Unless you prefer to bleed out while waiting for another surgeon?" Her eyes met mine, and for a moment I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. Not of dying, but of something else entirely. "Charlotte," she whispered, "what I did to you. It wasn't just about money." The transport team burst in before she could finish, and we were racing back to the OR. As they prepared her for surgery again, Marcus appeared at my side. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "Dr. Williams is available now." I shook my head, already reaching for a surgical mask. "She started this story. I'm going to finish it." As the anesthesia took hold, my mother's last words echoed in my head. What did she mean? It wasn't just about money? What other possible reason could there have been for using expired sutures on her own daughter? "BP's dropping again," Cadence announced as we began. "This is worse than before." I took a deep breath, pushing aside the questions swirling in my mind. "More light," I ordered, picking up the scalpel. "And someone page Mila Bradley in pathology. Tell her it's urgent. If anyone knew the truth about my mother's past decisions, it would be Mila." She'd been there that day, a young intern watching from the corner as my mother made the choice that would change both our lives forever. But first, I had to keep her alive long enough to get answers. The second surgery was successful, but the questions it left behind weighed heavier than any scalpel. I sat in my office, poring over my mother's medical records when Mila walked in, her lab coat still on and her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun. "I came as soon as I could," she said, closing the door behind her. "How is she?" "Stable for now." I pushed the records aside. "I need you to tell me what happened that day, Mila. The whole truth." Mila sank into the chair across from me, her face troubled. "I was hoping we'd never have to have this conversation. My mother just told me it wasn't about money. What did she mean?" Before Mila could answer, Marcus knocked and entered. "Sorry to interrupt, but you need to see this." He handed me a tablet displaying my mother's latest blood work. "This can't be right," I muttered, scanning the numbers. "Run it again." "Already did. Twice." Mila leaned over to look. "Those markers, Charlotte, they indicate long-term exposure to—" "I know what they indicate." I cut her off. "The question is, how long has she known?" The door burst open again, this time revealing Cadence. "Dr. Peters, your mother's asking for you. She's agitated and her pressure's climbing." I stood up. "Mila, don't go anywhere. This conversation isn't over." In my mother's room, the monitors were indeed showing elevated readings. She was trying to sit up despite the fresh surgical incisions. "You need to lie still," I ordered, moving to adjust her position. "Did you look at my blood work?" she demanded, grabbing my wrist. "Yes." "How long have you known about the condition?" She let out a bitter laugh that turned into a cough. "Since before your surgery. That's what I've been trying to tell you." The room seemed to tilt slightly. "What?" "It's genetic," she said, her voice weakening. "I knew there was a chance you had it too. The regular sutures, they would have torn through your tissue eventually. The expired ones were actually softer, more flexible." "Stop." I held up my hand, feeling sick. "You're saying you deliberately used defective materials on me because I was trying to save your life." Her voice rose, setting off the monitors again. "The standard protocol would have killed you within years. I had to adapt, to find a way." "By experimenting on your own daughter?" The words came out in a shout. "Without even telling me?" "Dr. Peters," Cadence warned, eyeing the climbing numbers on the monitor. Marcus appeared in the doorway. "Charlotte, a word?" I followed him into the hallway, my hands shaking. "Did you know about this?" "I just finished reviewing her old research files," he said quietly. "She was studying genetic connective tissue disorders. There are dozens of cases where standard surgical materials caused catastrophic failures in patients with the condition. So she used me as a test subject?" I pressed my palms against the cool hospital wall, trying to steady myself. "Charlotte?" Mila's voice came from behind us. "There's more you need to know." Before she could continue, alarms blared from my mother's room. We rushed back in to find her gasping for air, the monitors showing dangerous arrhythmia. "She's throwing clots," I realized, moving quickly to her side. "Push heparin now." "Charlotte," my mother wheezed, clutching at my hand. "Your patients, check their histories." "Don't try to talk," I ordered, but she persisted. "The condition, It's more common than we knew. You have to. Her eyes rolled back as the monitors screamed. Code blue, Cadence shouted, already starting compressions. The next 20 minutes were a blur of activity. Medications, defibrillation, more medications. Finally, we got her back, but she remained unconscious. She's stable, Marcus announced, checking the latest readings. But weak, very weak. I stood there, staring at my mother's pale face, my mind racing. Mila, I need you to pull every surgical case file of hers from the past 20 years. And I want genetic screens on all my current surgical patients. Charlotte, Marcus started, you can't seriously be considering… What if she's right? I turned to face him. What if she wasn't being reckless or cheap, but actually saw something nobody else did? What if she's been trying to tell us something important all along? Even if that's true, he argued, it doesn't justify experimenting on a child without consent. No, I agreed, touching my scar through my scrubs. It doesn't. But it might explain why I've never had complications from any of my surgeries since, despite having the same condition. And why some of our patients inexplicably reject standard sutures while others don't. Mila cleared her throat. There's something else you should see. She pulled out her phone, showing me an old email. Your mother sent this to me the day before your surgery. I was supposed to give it to you if anything ever happened to her. As I began to read, my hands started trembling again. The truth, it seemed, was far more complicated than I'd ever imagined. The email shook in my hands as I read it in the quiet of the hospital chapel. It was the only place I could find solitude at 3 a.m. My dearest Charlotte, it began. If you're reading this, something has gone wrong. The surgery I'm about to perform on you tomorrow isn't just routine appendix removal. You have the same condition I do. I thought I'd find you here. Isaac's voice interrupted my reading. My old mentor eased himself into the pew beside me, his weathered face kind but concerned. Marcus told me what happened. I handed him the phone. Read it. His eyes moved across the screen, widening slightly. When he finished, he let out a long breath. Well, that certainly changes things. Does it? I stood up, pacing the small space. She still experimented on me without consent. She still let me believe for 24 years that she chose cheap materials because of budget constraints. Sit down. Isaac patted the space beside him. Tell me what's really bothering you. What's bothering me is that I have patients scheduled for surgery tomorrow, and now I have to wonder if any of them have this condition. I have to wonder if I've been unknowingly putting them at risk all these years. Or unknowingly saving them. He countered, just like your mother saved you. The chapel door opened and Marcus hurried in. Charlotte, we've got the first batch of genetic screens back from the lab. My heart jumped. And? 3 of your current patients tested positive for the condition, including tomorrow morning's valve replacement. I sank back onto the pew. Cancel all my surgeries until further notice. Already done, he said. But there's more. Mila found something in your mother's old research files. You need to see this. We hurried to the research library where Mila had spread dozens of files across a large table. Cadence was there too, helping to organize the papers. Look at these case studies. Mila pointed to a stack of folders. Your mother identified a pattern 15 years ago. Patients with this genetic marker had a significantly higher rate of post-surgical complications when traditional suture materials were used. But the medical board rejected her findings, Cadence added, holding up a letter. They said her research methods were unethical. Because she tested her theory on her own daughter, I said bitterly. No. Mila shook her head. Because she couldn't prove how she knew which patients had the condition. The genetic test didn't exist back then. She was going on instinct and observation. And now we can prove she was right, Marcus added quietly. The implications hit me like a physical blow. How many patients could have been helped if someone had listened to her? That's not the question you need to ask, Isaac said from the doorway. The question is, what are you going to do now that you know the truth? Before I could answer, my pager went off. My mother's heart rate was dropping again. In her room, the monitors painted a grim picture. Her body was failing, system by system. She needs another surgery, Marcus said, examining her latest scans. She's too weak, I argued. She'll never survive it. She'll die without it, he countered. I looked at my mother's face, so peaceful in unconsciousness. The email's words echoed in my mind. I know you may never forgive me for making this choice, but I hope someday you'll understand that a mother's love sometimes means making impossible decisions. Get me the hospital board on the phone, I said suddenly, and find me every single case file where patients experienced unusual complications with standard sutures. What are you thinking? Isaac asked. I'm thinking it's time to finish what she started. I turned to my team. Cadence, I need you to coordinate with the lab for emergency genetic screening. Marcus, help Mila compile all the research data. We're going to prove this condition exists and establish a new protocol for treating it. And your mother? Marcus gestured to the bed. I took a deep breath. We operate, but not with standard materials. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. This is Dr. Peters. I need emergency approval for experimental surgical materials. Yes, I understand the risks. No, this can't wait until morning. As I hung up, Isaac touched my arm. You know this could end your career if you're wrong. And if I'm right, it could save countless lives. I looked at my mother's monitors again, including hers. The board's on line 1. Cadence called from the nurse's station. I squared my shoulders and picked up the phone. This is Dr. Charlotte Peters. I'm about to tell you something that will change how we approach surgery for certain patients. But first, I need you to listen to a story about a mother who made an impossible choice 24 years ago. The next few hours would determine not just my mother's fate, but potentially the future of surgical medicine. And for the first time since I became a surgeon, I understood exactly why my mother had done what she did. The hospital board's emergency session stretched into the early morning hours. I stood before them, my mother's research spread across the conference table, fighting exhaustion as I made my case. So you're telling us, Dr. Thompson, the head of the board, leaned forward, that your mother discovered this condition decades ago, but chose to keep it secret after her initial rejection? Not secret, I corrected. She continued documenting cases, building evidence. She just couldn't prove it without modern genetic testing. Which we now have, Marcus added, displaying the latest test results on the projector. Otis, the hospital administrator, shook his head. This is all very fascinating, but we're talking about using experimental materials on a critically ill patient. The liability alone is nothing compared to the liability of knowing about this condition and continuing to use standard procedures that could harm patients. I interrupted. We've already identified 15 current surgical candidates who test positive. The door opened and Mila rushed in, clutching a stack of papers. Sorry to interrupt, but you need to see this. She handed me a worn journal. It was in your mother's personal effects. As I flipped through the pages, my hands started shaking. These are detailed notes about every patient she suspected had the condition, including... I swallowed hard. Including the day she diagnosed me. Dr. Peters, Dr. Thompson said gently, we understand this is personal for you, but you're damn right it's personal, I snapped, pulling up my scrub top just enough to show my scar. This is what standard sutures did to me. And this, I held up my mother's journal, is proof that she knew it would happen if she didn't intervene. The room fell silent. Time's running out, Marcus reminded everyone. Dr. Violet Peters needs surgery within the next few hours, or we'll lose her. Otis cleared his throat. Even if we approve this, where would we get these specialized materials on such short notice? I already have them, I admitted. My mother kept a supply. Mila found them in her old research lab. That's completely unauthorized, Otis protested. So was saving my life 24 years ago, I countered. Sometimes doing the right thing means breaking the rules. Dr. Thompson studied me for a long moment. If we approve this, you understand it's your career on the line? My career, my mother's life, and the lives of countless future patients. I met his gaze steadily. I can live with those stakes, The board members huddled together, speaking in hushed tones. Finally, Dr. Thompson turned back to me. You have conditional approval, pending documentation of everything. And I mean everything. I was already heading for the door when Otis called out, Dr. Peters, don't make us regret this. In the OR prep room, I found Isaac waiting. The board approved it, I said, starting to scrub in. I know. He watched me carefully. But that's not what's bothering you, is it? I found this in her journal. I pulled a folded page from my pocket. Read it. His eyes scanned the weathered paper. The night before your surgery, she knew she was risking everything, I said, returning to the sink. Her career, her reputation, her relationship with me. She knew I might hate her for it. And she did it anyway. Because she loved you more than all of those things, he said simply. Marcus appeared in the doorway, already in surgical gear. We're ready. The OR was quiet as we began, everyone aware of the stakes. I held the specialized suture material in my hands, feeling its unique texture. BP's holding steady. Cadence reported. As I worked, I could almost hear my mother's voice guiding my hands, showing me what she'd learned through years of secret observation and careful documentation. There's the tear, Marcus pointed out, just like she described in her notes. Standard sutures would rip right through this tissue, I murmured, carefully placing the specialized material. She was right. She was right about everything. Hours passed in focused silence. Finally, I stepped back from the table. Close her up, I told Marcus. I need to check something. In the lab, Mila was running more genetic tests. Charlotte, look at this. She pointed to her screen. The marker appears in about 3% of the general population. That's thousands of potential surgical patients. Who could all be saved by what we learned today? I finished. My pager buzzed. My mother was in recovery. When I reached her room, her eyes were open. The specialized sutures. She whispered. You used them? I nodded, checking her vitals. Why didn't you ever tell me the truth? Would you have believed me? She reached for my hand. Would anyone have believed me without proof? I found your journal, I said. All those years of research, all those patients you identified, all leading to this moment. She squeezed my hand weakly. Now you can do what I couldn't. You can prove it. The monitors showed strong, steady readings. The specialized materials were working exactly as she'd predicted. There's something else you should know, I said, pulling out her journal. Something I found in here about why you really left medicine. My mother's face paled as I held up her journal. Where did you find that particular entry? It was tucked in the back, I said, opening to the dog-eared page. The night you resigned, it wasn't just about the medical board rejecting your research, was it? Before she could answer, Marcus knocked and entered. Sorry to interrupt, but the genetic results from the surgical ward are in. 20 more positive cases. 20? My mother tried to sit up, wincing. In just one ward? Lie still, I ordered, adjusting her bed. Your sutures may be special, but they still need time to heal. Charlotte, she grabbed my wrist. Those patients can't wait. You have to... I'm not doing anything until you tell me about Dr. Roberts, I cut in, watching her face carefully. The entry mentions him specifically. The room went quiet. Even Marcus, who had been checking monitors, stopped to listen. Robert Roberts. My mother finally said, her voice bitter. Head of surgery back then. He threatened to expose my unauthorized research if I didn't resign. But that's not all he did, is it? I pressed, reading from the journal. He said he'd make sure Charlotte never got into medical school if I pursued this further. Marcus let out a low whistle. That's why you disappeared. I couldn't risk your future, she said to me. Not after everything I'd done to ensure you had one. A knock at the door interrupted us. Otis entered, looking grave. Dr. Peters, both of you, we have a situation. What kind of situation? I asked. The media got wind of our emergency board meeting. They're running a story about experimental surgeries and genetic testing. He held up his tablet, showing a breaking news headline. They're calling it Legacy of Unethical Experiments. My mother started coughing, her monitors beeping in protest. Everyone out, I ordered, checking her vitals. She needs rest. In the hallway, Otis continued. The board is calling another emergency meeting. They're considering suspending all surgeries until this is sorted out. They can't do that, Marcus protested. We have patients who need immediate care. Then we need proof, I said. Concrete, undeniable evidence that this condition exists and that these specialized materials are the only safe option. How? Otis asked. Clinical trials take years. Unless, Marcus said slowly, we already have the trials. 24 years of documented cases. I turned to him. My mother's research. And your own surgical history, he added. You're living proof the specialized materials work. Get Mila, I told Marcus. Tell her to bring everything we found, and find Isaac. We need his reputation to back this up. Charlotte. My mother called weakly from her room. I went back in to find her trying to get out of bed. What are you doing? My old office, she gasped. 3rd floor, east wing. Behind the radiator cover, there's a USB drive. Everything's on it. Everything Roberts tried to bury. Mom, stop moving. I pushed her gently back. I'll get it. No, she grabbed my arm. You don't understand. Roberts is still on the hospital board. He's the one who leaked this to the media. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. After all these years, he's still trying to bury the truth? Because if it comes out now, his entire career will be destroyed. He knowingly suppressed information that could have saved lives. My pager buzzed. The board was assembling. Go, my mother said. Get the drive. I'll be fine. I hesitated at the door. Why didn't you tell me any of this before? Because I wanted you to become a surgeon for the right reasons, she said softly. Not out of revenge or bitterness. I wanted you to be better than me. You saved my life, I replied. Maybe it's time I returned the favor. Racing through the hospital corridors, I found Marcus and Mila already heading to my mother's old office. The radiator cover's sealed shut, Mila said, examining it. Not for long, Marcus replied, producing a screwdriver from his pocket. As we worked to remove the cover, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Well, well, a familiar voice said. I should have known you'd come looking here. We turned to find Dr. Roberts standing in the doorway. His silver hair and expensive suit a stark contrast to our scrubs. It's over, I said, holding up the USB drive we'd just retrieved. The truth is coming out. The truth? He laughed coldly. The truth is your mother performed unauthorized experiments on her own child. No one will believe anything that comes from her research. No, I stepped forward. The truth is you condemned countless patients to surgical complications because you were too proud to admit she was right. The board meeting starts in 10 minutes, he said smoothly. I wonder which version they'll believe. As he turned to leave, I called after him. I'm my mother's daughter, Dr. Roberts. I don't give up easily. And this time, we have proof. The USB drive felt heavy in my hand as we rushed toward the boardroom. 24 years of secrets were about to come to light, and nothing would ever be the same. The hospital boardroom crackled with tension as I plugged the USB drive into the projector. Dr. Roberts sat at the far end, his face a mask of practiced concern. Before we begin, he said smoothly, I think we should address the serious ethical violations that have come to light. You want to talk about ethical violations? I interrupted, pulling up the first file. Let's start with this email chain from 1999. The room fell silent as the messages appeared on screen. Robert's face went pale. We can't acknowledge this condition exists, I read aloud. The liability would bankrupt the hospital, bury the research, and handle Peters quietly. Those emails could be fabricated, he protested, but his voice wavered. Really? Marcus stepped forward, holding up a stack of papers. Because we have the original printed copies from the hospital archives, complete with your signature. Mila clicked to the next document. And here's the genetic study from last night. 23 patients, all showing the exact markers my mother identified 24 years ago. Dr. Roberts, Dr. Thompson leaned forward. Is this true? Did you deliberately suppress research about a potentially dangerous genetic condition? Before he could answer, the door burst open. Cadence rushed in, breathless. Sorry to interrupt, but you need to see this. She turned on the room's TV to a news channel. A reporter stood outside the hospital. Breaking news in the medical community as patients across the country are coming forward with stories of mysterious post-surgical complications. Many are now demanding genetic testing after reports surfaced about a previously unknown condition. It's gone national, Marcus whispered. Turn it off, Roberts demanded, standing up. This is all circumstantial. You have no proof these complications are connected. Actually, Isaac's voice came from the doorway. We do. He walked in, followed by 3 other doctors. These are surgical chiefs from 3 different hospitals. They've been quietly tracking similar cases for years. One of them stepped forward. We've all seen it. Patients with unexplained tissue fragility, unusual healing patterns, but nobody could prove why until now. The specialized materials work, I added, pulling up my mother's surgical data. Every patient she treated with them had better outcomes, including me. You experimented on children, Roberts shouted, desperation creeping into his voice. No, I said quietly. She saved children, while you watched them suffer to protect your reputation. Dr. Thompson stood up. I've heard enough. Dr. Roberts, you're suspended pending a full investigation. Security will escort you out. As Roberts was led away, my pager went off. My mother's heart rate was dropping again. Go, Marcus said. We'll handle things here. I ran to her room, finding her struggling to breathe. What happened? Pulmonary embolism, Cadence reported, already pushing medication. The clot-busting drugs aren't working. We need to operate again, I said, checking her scans. Now. Charlotte, my mother wheezed, grabbing my hand. The board. Roberts. It's over, I told her. They know everything. You were right all along. A faint smile crossed her face before her eyes rolled back. She's crashing, Cadence called out. The next hours were a blur of surgical precision and desperate hope. As I worked to save my mother's life for the second time, I realized something had changed. The anger that had driven me for so many years was gone, replaced by understanding. BP's stabilizing, Marcus announced finally. We got it. Later in recovery, I sat beside her bed, watching her breathe steadily. You should see this, Mila said softly, showing me her phone. Social media was exploding with the story. Genetic justice was trending. The medical board is fast-tracking approval for genetic screening protocols, Marcus added. They're calling it the Peters Protocol. She'd hate that. I laughed quietly. She never wanted recognition. She just wanted to help people. My mother stirred, her eyes fluttering open. Charlotte, I'm here. I took her hand. The specialized materials worked again. You're going to be fine. The research is changing everything. Hospitals across the country are implementing genetic screening. Roberts is finished, and I squeezed her hand. I understand now. Why you did what you did. Tears filled her eyes. I never wanted to hurt you. You didn't, I said firmly. You gave me purpose. Every surgery I've performed, every life I've saved, it all started with you making an impossible choice. Dr. Peters? A nurse appeared at the door. There's a patient asking for you. She saw the news and thinks she might have the condition. I stood up, straightening my scrubs. Time to get back to work. Charlotte? My mother called as I reached the door. Thank you for finishing what I started. No, I smiled back at her. Thank you for giving me the chance to do it right. As I walked down the hospital corridor, I touched my scar through my scrubs. For the first time in 24 years, it felt like a badge of honor rather than a mark of betrayal. Sometimes the deepest wounds lead to the greatest healing. Not just for ourselves, but for others too. The morning sun streamed through the hospital windows as I reviewed genetic test results with my mother. She sat in a comfortable chair in her office, recently reinstated, while I perched on the desk edge. "Another positive match," I said, passing her the file. "That makes 312 confirmed cases just in this hospital." "And to think," she smiled, "it all started with a mother's desperate gamble." A knock at the door interrupted us. Marcus entered, followed by Dr. Thompson and several members of the medical board. "The official announcement is ready," Dr. Thompson said. "We'd like you both to be there." My mother shook her head. "This is Charlotte's moment. I've had my time." "Actually," I helped her up, "they need to hear it from both of us, the past and the future together." In the hospital's main conference room, cameras flashed as we approached the podium. I spotted familiar faces in the crowd: Mila, Cadence, Isaac, and dozens of patients whose lives had been changed by our discovery. 24 years ago, I began, a surgeon made a choice that seemed unethical at the time. She used unauthorized materials on her own daughter, knowing it might end her career. Today, we know that decision saved not just my life, but potentially thousands of others. My mother stepped forward. "The Peters protocol isn't just about genetic testing. It's about challenging medical assumptions, about listening to patients who say something isn't right, and about having the courage to find better solutions. Starting today," I continued, "every surgical patient in this hospital will be screened for the condition. We're also launching a nationwide database to track cases and outcomes." A reporter raised her hand. "Dr. Peters, either of you, what would you say to critics who still question the original ethics of this discovery?" My mother started to speak, but I touched her arm. "I'll take this one." Facing the cameras, I pulled up my scrub top just enough to show my scar. "This is what standard medical procedure would have done to me. My mother saw a problem, found a solution, and sacrificed everything to implement it. That's not unethical. That's the very foundation of medical progress." After the press conference, we returned to my mother's office to find an unexpected visitor. Dr. Roberts stood there, looking older and tired. "Security cleared me for 5 minutes," he said quickly. "I came to apologize." "Save it," my mother started, but I held up my hand. "No, let him speak." "I was wrong," he said simply. I was so focused on protecting the hospital's reputation that I forgot our real purpose: helping people. "The lawsuit papers were served this morning. I'll plead guilty to all charges." After he left, my mother sank into her chair. I never thought I'd hear those words from him. "People can surprise you," I said, thinking of my own journey from vengeful daughter to understanding advocate. A commotion outside drew us to the window. Below, in the hospital parking lot, dozens of people were gathering. Many held signs. "Thank you, Dr. Peters." "Genetic justice." "My life was saved by the Peters protocol." "Your fan club awaits," I teased. "Our fan club," she corrected, then grew serious. "Charlotte, about your childhood, the isolation, the pain." "Mom," I interrupted, "look at what that pain created. Sometimes the deepest scars lead us exactly where we need to go." My pager buzzed. A new surgical consult. The patient had tested positive for the condition. "Duty calls," I said, heading for the door. "Charlotte?" My mother's voice stopped me. Would you let me observe? Like old times?" I smiled. "Better than old times. This time we do it right. Together." In the OR, my mother watched from the observation deck as I prepared for surgery. Marcus stood ready to assist. Cadence monitored the equipment, and Mila waited to process tissue samples for the database. "Scalpel," I called out, then paused, looking up at my mother. "This one's for you." As I made the first incision, I felt the weight of everything that had brought us here. The pain, the secrets, the vindication, and finally the healing. Not just of bodies, but of relationships, of trust, of purpose. "Specialized sutures," I announced, reaching for the materials my mother had championed so long ago. Through the observation window, I saw her smile, and I knew we had both found what we were looking for. Not revenge, not justification, but something far more powerful: the chance to turn our shared wound into a gift for others. Ready to close, I said finally, looking at my team, my family, really. Each of them had played a part in this journey, in transforming a mother's desperate choice into a medical breakthrough. As I placed the final suture, I thought about all the patients who would never have to wonder why their bodies rejected standard treatments, who would never bear the kind of scar I carried. That was the real victory. Not in proving we were right, but in preventing others from suffering. My mother's voice came through the intercom, strong and clear. "Beautiful work, Charlotte. Beautiful work." And it was. All of it. Every scar, every struggle, every step that led us here. Beautiful, painful, necessary work.